Hello, guys. This is Raj. Today, for this lecture, we're going to talk about lectures and how to learn from lectures. Apologies, I'm a little bit sick, so I might have a little bit of a cough here and there, but we'll get into it. Today we will talk about lectures for this video. I'm going to first introduce the idea of the record, revise, and review method for learning in classes. Then I will talk about tips for learning from lectures, and then in the next video on note-taking, I'll give some tips for taking notes, as well as if you should type or handwrite your notes. So first, the R3, actually first, I should say that throughout all these videos that we will be listening to and learning from over the next few weeks, I'm going to be sharing a lot of different strategies. The reason being is my goal for this course is to help you guys be as successful as possible in college. And so my approach to this is to just give you guys as many different strategies as possible so you all can decide for yourself which strategies are the most beneficial to you. Because some students may need to improve more on learning from lectures, and then some students may need to improve more on maintaining a good focus or avoiding procrastination. So this course will share strategies on all that sort of stuff. And so because of that, I want to just make sure that you all do not feel as overwhelmed as you can from these lectures, right? So do not try and implement all the strategies that we learn from in these lectures because it's just too much and it's going to be too overwhelming for you. Instead, what I would say is prioritize slow, gradual improvement over time. So instead of trying to make five different changes to how you learn in college and how you maintain focus, instead of five different changes, just make like one or two and then stick with it for a few weeks, maybe a month. And once you find that it is an automatic habit and it is very easy to do those new changes, then go into another new change or maybe two more new changes, right? Just do slow and gradual improvement because it'll be more sustainable. You will be able to maintain the changes that you make without falling back or reverting to your old self. So yeah, with that out of the way with, let's talk about lectures. So in throughout the few weeks of this course, we're going to talk about this way of learning from college courses. I got this from one of the books that I read in preparation for this class. It is called the R3 method or the record, revise, and review method, and it's pretty simple. So record means that you are recording and learning information from lectures and texts, which is what this lecture is going to talk about today. Then afterwards, for at least the very difficult classes that you want to really prioritize a lot of time in, you're going to then revise your notes, which just means improving your notes after first taking them. Again, this step would only be for like the really difficult classes where you have to put in a lot of time to learn from. We will talk about how to revise your notes in the next week's lecture. And then once you have revisited your notes or just recorded information, you will then review. So you will use your notes to study, and this will again just depend on how much time you want to spend on your course that you're taking. For like the really difficult classes, maybe you want to try and review every week, or maybe once, twice, three times a week, something like that, before the exam even comes up. Other classes, you'll be able to just review a week before the exam. It just depends on how difficult the class is. But we will talk about how to review and study for your exams using your notes towards the end of this course in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So, yeah, today again, we'll talk about recording information from lectures. First, I want you all to pause, take a second to think about this question. What are some tips that you already know for learning from lectures? So, take a second, pause, and think about this question. All right. So, I'm sure that you guys know some helpful strategies to learn from lectures. I will share with you all some of my most effective tips. The first thing for lectures is that listening requires work. What does that mean? In my experience, a lot of the time, at least in Virginia Tech, which is in the United States, I don't know how it's like in other countries, but in the United States, I've found in my experience constantly, again and again, that students during lectures, when they're sitting in the class session, they'll be on their laptops or on their phones, and they'll just be doing something completely random, right? Maybe they will be shopping online, or maybe they'll be like watching a video or watching memes, instead of actually paying attention to the lecturer and paying attention to taking notes. And oftentimes they think that they can multitask, right? That they can listen to the lecturer while also looking at something else completely different on their phone. And research shows that this is not really the case most of the time. We cannot really multitask unless it is very simple activities, right? So whenever I might be cooking, for example, then I might be able to like listen to music in the background and not lose focus. But for trying to learn from lectures, you really cannot multitask. And so instead, you have to really pay attention, put all your focus on what the lecturer is saying, paying attention to the new information, as well as taking good notes. And note taking, not only does it help you record information in the lecture so that you can refer to it in the future, it's also in itself, the act of taking notes helps you learn as well. By writing the information down, it helps kind of imprint that information in your mind. So that's the first tip. Second big strategy is do not be shy to ask questions. This is especially important in really difficult classes with difficult material. And, again, just being honest, in my experience, there are some professors that are not the best at teaching, and are not the best at explaining new information. And so because of this, if you are confused, there is a good chance that other students in the room are also confused, right? So if you don't know what's going on, then don't feel like you're the only person and that everyone somehow just is on with the program. It's almost certainly not the case. Almost certainly there are other students confused as well. So when you are confused, some helpful strategies to ask for questions. One helpful tip is do not ask the instructor to explain the entire content that they just explained. For instance, if let's say that the lesson for like a math course was just on the quadratic equation, do not ask, I don't understand how to do the quadratic equation. That might frustrate them because there's so many different steps to the quadratic equation. The instructor doesn't really know what you do and do not understand. So instead, ask more specific questions. So an example is, I am confused on the third step of the quadratic equation. So being more specific on what in particular we do not get. And it can also be helpful to state what you do understand first before asking what you do not understand, right? So with the quadratic equation example, I understand how you did the first two steps. I'm still stuck though on how you got your answer in the third step. So you can ask questions, during class, or you can ask them after class as well, whichever works for you. Um, so yeah. So next big strategy is reading text before lecture. So again, these strategies are really for you have to prioritize and determine if it is worth the time. I would say that, well, first let me back up. Sometimes in lectures, the instructor may assign a text that you can read or have to read before or after the lecture, right? So oftentimes, for example, there might be a textbook that is given in a course. And maybe the instructor expects you to read the textbook chapter, maybe they don't. But for really challenging classes, it can be beneficial to try and read the textbook before the lecture happens, just so you know a little bit about the lecture information beforehand, and will then better be able to understand the lecture's content. Honestly, though, like I said, this would only be for like the most difficult classes, and oftentimes there are honestly better sources of information to learn the course material, such as videos on YouTube. So, if you truly do not understand the content of the course, what I have done in my experience and many other people that I know have done in their experience is to just search on YouTube, like the topic that you're stuck on, and then just look for an explainer video, right? So for instance, if I'm if I'm in algebra and I do not understand the quadratic equation, just Googling in YouTube, quadratic equation explained, and just watching a short little quick video to explain it. That oftentimes is a good way to learn material. And so doing that before a lecture can help as well, to help understand the lecture's material. Um, So yep, again, this would be only for the most difficult classes. So now we're going to talk about focus and paying attention during a lecture. So I want you all to pause, take a second to think about this question. Why might a student lose focus during a lecture? All right, so now we'll share some reasons why students may lose focus. First, I will say, I think I've told this before to you all, but uh, lectures are oftentimes not designed to be the most effective ways of learning, designed by instructors, right? So, in the ideal classroom scenario, the lecturer will have maybe 5 to 10 minutes of lecture, followed by some quick practice, some questions that are being asked to the students to make it more interactive. And then they'll have maybe 5 or 10 or 15 more minutes of lecture, and then some interactive questions, and then 5 or 10 more minutes, right? So it's not just listening to 55 minutes of just someone talking or an hour of someone talking, because our minds are not built to just pay attention for 1 hour straight for listening to someone talking. So that is what ideally would happen, is not having an hour of lecture. But unfortunately, it is the case that in college, oftentimes you will be in classes where it is literally just a professor talking to you for an hour straight. And so, understandably, it's going to be hard to lose focus, or it's going to be easy to lose focus. So, some potential reasons to lose focus are boredom, stress and anxiety, being distracted from the environment, being tired, especially if the class is late in the day, and being confused. So I will share some helpful tips for each of these cases, for if you find yourself in one of these scenarios. So if you are bored, I would say to first just remind yourself about why this class is important and why you're in the class, right? You will be in classes where it is going to be boring, and you will be in classes where you're just forced to take the class, even though you have really no choice. And so oftentimes it's just helpful to just understand why you're in this class to begin with, right? So maybe connecting it to like your future long-term goals of like, I may not like being in biology, but it's going to help me to get my degree in pharmaceutical science or something like that. If you are stressed or anxious, I would ask, why are you stressed or why are you anxious? Is it due to academics? Is it due to other reasons? And once you identify why it is that you feel stressed or anxious, seek out support, right? So there are student support groups that will be on your college campus, counselors, reaching out to friends and family for help. You all in your EK cohort, the other members, right? And there's other things that you can do to relieve stress and anxiety. So for me, what's really helpful is like yoga, exercise. So just finding ways to reduce your stress and anxiety. Getting good sleep as well is really important. And a useful tip for all cases, pretty much no matter what, if you're losing focus, is to just get up in the middle of class and just take a short walk. Maybe go to the bathroom, maybe get a drink of water. Um, I find that for me especially, it's like if my brain just feels like mush and it's just very tired, or I'm very tired, just getting out of the room and just taking a breather for a few minutes before coming back in, is helpful. And you probably won't lose any important information. Um, so yeah, and one more tip for all cases is to sit in the front of the room. Whether you are bored, whether you are confused, sitting in the front of the room will make it to where you feel more accountable and you feel more like you have to focus because you're right in front of the room. So some more tips if you are distracted from the environment, such as from laptops or from sitting with friends, you would want to think about whether you want to sit in the front, if you want to sit alone. And if it's from technology you're being distracted by, then do things like disable notifications on your phone. For me, I would always just turn off my phone and just put it away, like inside my bag to where I could not access it. Maybe don't use your laptop, or if you do use your laptop to take notes, just have something like Google Docs or whatever you're taking notes in, have that open. If you are tired and or the class is late in the day, ask yourself, are you getting enough sleep? 7 to 9 hours is the ideal amount for adults, according to science. And we'll talk in a future lecture about how to get good sleep, because it is very important, not just for focus, but for learning as well and memory. And I would say also try to schedule earlier classes or try and schedule it to where you do not have multiple classes in a row. So in college, oftentimes you'll have a little bit of choice for how to make your schedule. And so with the choice, you could make it to where you have classes from like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. or something. I took some classes in my experience that started at like 5 o'clock and they ended at 8 because they were like 3 hour long classes. And I really liked those classes, but they were also sometimes very hard to focus in because it was from, it started at 5 p.m. Um, and so yeah, and then if you are confused, ask yourself questions like, why are you confused? Is it because you do not understand the prior lesson material, that you don't have the prerequisite knowledge? Or is it because you do have the prerequisite knowledge, the prior material, but you just don't understand what the lecturer is trying to explain? And so if this is the case, then, just ask questions during class, after class. Also, you can email the professor for your question. You can ask during the office hours. Office hours, I highly recommend going to if you are confused. Next, we'll talk about tips for learning from professors with accents, because this can also be a difficulty. If you find yourself in one of these cases, I would say the best thing is to sit near the front. This is not just to have better focus, but also to pick up nonverbal cues like movements, facial expressions. Oftentimes, you'll find that the lecturer, the instructor, will have little subtle movements that will signal when they're going to go, when they will go to a new topic, or when they are emphasizing or focusing on something really important for you to learn. There are also web apps or web sites where you can record the lecture with a laptop and then listen again to it at a slower speed with the recording. So one example is Otter.ai. Some of these apps are free and some of them are free for a little bit for a free trial, then you have to pay for a subscription. So just find whatever works with you, free apps or pay for subscription. But if you do want to record the lecture, try to get permission, or not try, but get permission from the instructor first, right? Um, Another tip is if you do find yourself being confused with the professor's accent, try to review with a classmate, right? We'll talk in the future about how to form study groups, but asking a classmate for clarification is also very helpful. If the classmate is is a good student. Another tip is when you're taking notes, note down the points that you do not understand so that you can ask about those points in the future, using the tips that we talked about before. And then, like I said, asking questions during class, after class, and so on. And the biggest, probably one of the biggest tips that's helped me the most in really difficult classes is what I've talked about before, learning from other resources. So YouTube videos, from my experience and a lot of other people's experience, YouTube videos are one of, if not the best, ways to learn material. Just because you'll find people on YouTube are very, or can be very good at explaining material, especially in like the sort of beginner level classes that you'll take in your first year of college, like on calculus and chemistry, college physics. If you just Google the topic in YouTube and find a video that explains it, um, you might find that you won't be as bothered with the accent of the instructor and will learn material in a much better way. So yeah, the last thing we'll talk about for learning from lectures is this thing called the cycle of self-regulated learning. So this is really important. We're going to talk about this all throughout the weeks of this course. It is basically a method for improving yourself at pretty much anything. So what this methodology says is if you want to improve yourself in any domain, such as learning from lectures, first, what you want to do is plan out what you are going to do. So plan out what strategies do you want to do to improve your performance and prioritize the strategies that will be most beneficial, right? So like I said, you don't want to try and make 5 different changes all at once. What I would do is pick 1 or 2 strategies from this lecture. For instance, maybe it's sitting in the front of the room and asking questions. So pick those 2 strategies, write them down, maybe type them down, and plan out how you're going to implement that in the class. Once you have a plan before the class starts, then you monitor, you have some awareness about whether or not you are asking questions to the lecturer. And if you're not asking questions, then monitor why, right? What is the feelings in your body and the thoughts in your head that are preventing you from asking those questions? And then after the class, reflect on your performance, right? So ask questions like, was I successful in doing the strategies that I planned out? Why or why not? Did the strategies that I planned to do, was it helpful? Right? And so this is a really simple way to improve yourself at pretty much anything, but this is definitely applicable to lectures. So this is an example of uh, putting this self-regulated learning cycle to practice. I have my goals, lecture goals. So this is a plan for what I would be doing during the class. So I'd make this plan before the class starts. So sitting in front, asking one question, and having no distractions. And for this plan, it's also helpful to have the SMART goals, where you have things like a measurable goal, like asking one question that's measurable, being specific about what you want to do. So, for instance, maybe I could say, ask one question during class where I specify what in particular I do not understand. So, things like that. Then on the bottom here, with these two questions written down from my handwriting, these are reflection questions that I would consider after the class, right? So was I successful? Did the goals help? So yeah, that is everything that I have to share about how to learn from lectures.